opportunity in being able to either work with a technician maybe in, let's say, Singapore or in Germany, and having, again, work with maintenance collaboratively via virtual reality, where that person, that technician sitting in Germany can walk through the equipment step by step with someone who has little or no familiarity with the equipment. Same thing would be true of repair of the equipment. One of the challenges that companies have, especially today, is finding skilled mechanics with good technical ability. We don't have the trade schools, we don't have the technical training, and sadly, in many instances, people with the aptitude to be able to do good maintenance. I see this as being an opportunity, likewise, virtual reality, to support and augment the training function going on within a plant. As a side note, one of the things that I'm doing currently outside of my regular work is working with the University of Illinois here in Chicago and their Innovation Center. Very quickly, the Innovation Center has been working with various companies that happen to have problems or technical challenges or studies where, for one reason or another, they may not have the people, or where hiring consultants can be very expensive. See an opportunity here for virtual reality, be able to augment some of the services that the university can supply. And just as an example, one of the things that the university has been doing is working with Caterpillar, the equipment company. Caterpillar may have some problems or some issues that requires a lot of people to go out and secure information, put together studies to help them with solutions to those problems. Things as simple as, how do you maintain a fleet of equipment that's working on a big construction project, or building roads or building railroads where you've got equipment scattered for miles. I see opportunity for virtual reality to help in this kind of effort. So again, unfortunately, the industries that I come from are usually late to the table to adopt technology, but I see a lot of opportunity here in both engineering and in operations of manufacturing plants to utilize it. Any questions?
We'll get to Q&A at the end, Andrew.
All right, very good. Well, thank you.
Thank you. All right, and with that, I would imagine, when we do get to Q&A, one of the things that a lot of people could probably ask about with Andrew, again, you do have the deep background in the actual industry, so for people who are VR and AR folks that are trying to figure out how to provide solutions to the industry, that would likely be your area. Up next, we have Jake Steinerman from PTC. And Jake, why don't you come and join me? All right, you're already up here, so I will sit down and shut up and advance your slides and play videos for you.
Oh, thank you, Matt. You make it sound like I'm whipping you into shape there, but I appreciate
that's what I'm here to do. Thanks.
appreciate the help, and thanks for the invitation. Let me face everyone here. So good evening, everyone. Thanks, Matt, and the VR AR Chicago group for inviting me here. So my name is Jake Steinerman. I'm an AR field engineer with PTC. I actually used to live in Chicago, so used to attend these events in person. I moved about 2 years ago. I'm currently based in Washington D.C. And when before I worked for PTC, I worked for Dow Chemical, a major materials company, and actually helped open and found one of Dow's first digital transformation offices that's in Chicago, down in the.
Uh-oh. We lost you.
Hey, Jake, we're not hearing you at the moment.
Jake, I think we lost your microphone.
Oh, sorry, I cut out there for
a
second. Yeah, sorry, my internet. I'm currently in northern Vermont, so my internet's kind of a little wonky. So I was afraid that would happen, but back. All right, cool. So I'm going to focus on my work that I'm doing with PTC, since as a software company, we work with a lot of industrial and manufacturing organizations across the world. So if you can go to the next slide. On the next one, that's my title slide there. All right, so first I wanted to actually pose a question to you guys, and you can use the raise hand function here in Verbella. How many of you have actually put together IKEA furniture? Right, yeah, the very complicated instructions you have to use to put together the furniture. It's all image based, right? But there's still a lot that you have to
Like we lost your audio again, Jake. All right. So I gotta say, this is actually the first time we've had the audio drop out like this for a speaker. We did have somebody who managed to get cut out right at the end of their presentation once. Let's see. Yeah, we lost Jake completely. All right. So I'm going to call an audible here, I think, and see if we can get Andy Vandenbroek up, and then we'll bring Jake back, hopefully. You want to go for it, Andy? All right. So I apologize in advance for everybody for jumping slides quite a bit here, but we're going to let Andy go, and hopefully Jake can figure his tech out. Oh, Jake's back.
Cool.
Hey, Jake, I'm going to have Andy go.
Sure. Sorry, my app crashed, so I had to restart it.
That's okay. We're going to have, I'll jump back to you, but let me advance through your slides real quick and get to, oops, I'm already too far ahead of.
One back. Yep.
Andy, perfect. There we go. All right, so we'll get back to you, Jake, as soon as Andy's on. Thanks.
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you, Matt, for inviting me. So I'm Andy. I'll spare you the last name. It's related to pronouns, I learned. I'm CEO and co-founder of Reality Matters, an immersive content creation studio. Today I will be telling you more about my story on how I ended up in VR and XR space. Basically, my story starts in 2007 when I founded my communication agency. What's a communication agency and pharma in manufacturing have in common? I'll tell you that a bit more in the coming slides. We were basically pulled into the manufacturing and logistics sector because of our first client, which was Toyota Material Handling Europe. In 2011, we supported them with an exhibit in Hanover, where every year a big logistics fair is taking place called CEMAT. The challenge they through or the question from Toyota at that point was to find an innovative way to visualize their forklift safety technology. Next slide, please. Basically, we didn't realize it at the time, but it was actually the start of our XR journey. Our solution was to build a forklift simulator, mainly focusing on the features that were needed to highlight the technologies at the time. You could compare it with an ABS system of your car, helping you brake and slow down wherever needed. But it's something you can't really experience in real life. So a simulator was the best solution. At that point in time, we still used screens and a big setup, like you can see on the picture, with forklift chassis and so on. Yeah, very quickly it became clear that the simulation was really good enough to get used in a training environment. So we started to improve the software and enabling trainers to create scenarios. The main downside of this kind of simulator was the size, flexibility, and cost, because the average cost of training a forklift driver isn't that high. And if you need to invest in a simulator of about 70K, it will take a long time before you break even. And also during transport, screens often broke and needed to be repaired. Next slide, please. So in 2013, the Oculus DK1 became available, and we immediately started testing the potential of the device. I think it was clear that it would solve a whole set of issues that we had before with the screens. We could shrink the whole setup so it would fit on one pallet. It was easy to ship. Also easier to use, but all the benefits, there was one big downside, the motion sickness that we still faced with the Oculus DK1. Next slide, please. On this slide, you can see that we reduced the whole simulator solution. Quite dramatically, which was nice at the time, but I think the main challenge we were facing was that, with the motion sickness issue, that a lot of drivers couldn't really finish their training and courses, so that resulted in the project on pause until there was a better solution. So I think if we would compare the DK1 with the technology now, it's a totally different discussion. But back then it was really a big issue for us. Now you can advance 2 slides, Matt, please. Few examples. So basically, created a few pilots projects also for Toyota. One of them is the Product Explorer. The Product Explorer isn't meant to be used for customer-facing solutions. It's basically using the abilities of VR to actually go more into depth and explore the product. The main reason why we create this solution was to solve a problem that existed at the site of service engineers. There are a lot of parts that can be changed and interchangeable. Products are also regularly updated. So we basically looked into a visual representation of the parts manual of the products. So a service engineer usually knows where the part is located and what he needs to change, but we want to reduce the amount of misorders that were shipped to the local service engineer, and then he notices that it's the wrong part and he sends it back, which is not really cost efficient. So linked to that, there was another challenge: is how can we get all the CAD data from the R&D files as quickly as possible into the virtual environments, because it's quite the hell of a job to structure that. So that was also a double purpose of the project. Next slide, please. Then we also worked on, Matt, do you also show the video on the other screen?
Yeah, I can. Do these videos have audio?
Normally not.
Okay.
You can just talk through them. So basically in the video, you can see the first phase of the assembly line training that we developed. The main challenge with this project, not a development as such, but more gathering the information from within the company. I think that's underestimated at this point in time, because we all look and watch demos that we see online, and it all looks fine and fancy. But once you start to dig in, it's a lot of information that you need to run through, and you need really to have the good internal people to support you with that. One of our takeaways in creating solutions like this is basically also that we really need to focus on functionality over graphics. In the first phase, I think it's nice to have a nice and shiny application. It needs to feel real, and people need to intuitively be able to use the environment, and then we can bump up the graphics. So this is quite a simple setup, but it does the job for the training that is required. And I think VR shines when it comes to process training. That's clear. It teaches the workers all the steps and the order of the steps that they need to follow to, in this case, build a forklift. It also allows the worker to make mistakes, and I think that's valuable in learning. Yeah, in the whole learning phase. So learning by doing is the best way to teach something to workers. Also, additionally, the benefit that isn't always considered is the fact that you can also get people vetted on board. You can use it for onboarding. You can retrain them when there is something that will change in your environment or in your factory. You can already prepare people for those changes and also get feedback from them, because sometimes the people on the factory floor also have valuable inputs on how to optimize the whole setup of your factory. And next to that, we also keep track of all movements that somebody does in the virtual environment. So we can also use that data to improve the ergonomy of the workstations. Slide, please. Actually, linking a bit back to what Andrew said earlier, we also noticed that a flexible tool to create own scenarios in virtual realities is very useful, because that gives the flexibility to trainers and operation managers, which is quite interesting. So they can basically, before they even purchase new equipment, start to move the organization within the factory around and see what fits, what doesn't fit, how to maximize productivity and so on, by rearranging shelving, machinery, storage, and so on. so they can see what the impact will be of those changes. And we all pour this into one touch and tap solution that runs on your PC or even your mobile, and you can view the environments that you create in augmented and virtual reality on the fly as well, to have a better view of what you have been doing and looking into solution more in depth. Next slide, please. Next to training people in VR, and that's also basically linking to what Andrew said, is that very useful to use mixed reality, because you can augment the workforce by making all the information available in front of their eyes, like making schematics and instructions appear, and it's all contextual. What you see, you have in front of you, the machine that's in front of you, you can get the right schematics right away, without needing to look for the paper plans and so on. Quality assurance, you can overlay the digital reference objects and see what the differences are, making it easier for human reviewers to spot problems on products that have been built. So if you compare it in VR, a worker gets taught processes and steps that they need to take. In mixed reality, we can provide contextual information, so they are better prepared and they are always supported as well during their tasks. What we noticed is that we need to make a differentiation between the level of experience. If you have a very experienced service engineer, you don't need to bother him with too much information, and it's more whenever he needs it, he needs to be able to activate it. If you're just starting at a company and you need to learn a lot, then you need to support people a lot as well. So you need to make a differentiation on an individual basis almost. Next slide, please. So first reactions when people or users start to use VR or augmented reality, at least that's what we noticed. There's a lot of wows and everybody's excited and looking at the potential of the technology. Next slide. But that quickly changes once they start to think a bit further on how to actually move forward, and a lot of questions pop up, and that's the phase that you, as a supplier, as a partner, really need to help to guide your client into the right direction and make them understand what needs to happen and how we will handle it. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, trying to get those hows and whys and costs more into a certain structured approach, and trying to guide them towards some of the internal key contacts that they will need to talk to understand what virtual and augmented reality could do for other departments as well. Next slide, please. So the challenges that we get or that we experienced, if I can say it like that. So as I promised, I won't go into numbers, but more into facts that we learned over time. So basically, you need to guide people and help them to gain knowledge about extended reality. For us, can only compare with ourselves, of course. At Reality Matters, for us, it's second nature. We tested everything. We know the difference between a HoloLens and a HTC Vive and a Quest and so on. So it's all normal because it's in our day-to-day lives. But a lot of people didn't use VR or extended realities in such a way. So it's like, okay, how can we use this? What's the difference between all of this, and how can I leverage technology to my benefit? So I think once you have the important question is the why will you do it? If somebody answers because my competitor is doing so, that's not the right answer. So it's more important to help them understand what the benefit will be, or what the benefit will be for you to use these new technologies. Once you know the whys, the hows, and the technology angle, then it's very important to also define a roadmap. Can already shoot for the moon, I would say, and then go there, but in very small steps. It's better than building a big rocket, that's taking 2 years and then going there at once, because that won't work. That's something we learned the hard way as well. Next slide, please. So the how to transfer that knowledge, workshops and combination with experience sessions are actually the best way. You will need to give some boring presentation slides approach sessions to give the basic the basic differentiation between the different technologies. But on the other hand, you need to make people use virtual reality headsets, augmented reality, mixed reality headsets, so they know what the difference is, how to leverage it, and that will get also the it will be easier for everyone to understand how those solutions will work on the factory floor. Slide, please. So once you understand what needs to happen, then at least you can already create a roadmap and a project plan. But then there's another challenging aspect of the whole XR journey throughout the company, which is setting up a pipeline. It's something we learned over time as well, that it's easy to get one file or one 3D asset or set of test data sets that you can integrate, but to make regular updates, you need really a streamlined process, which doesn't take too much time, so people can quickly update content over time, add new products to it, and so on. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the results that we all want, of course, is increase information retention, increase productivity, get more confident workers. I think that's a very important aspect. And increase safety, because a lot of solutions that we create are also safety, linked to safety and performance. I need to wrap up now, but I was at the end of the presentation anyway, so no problem there. Don't hesitate to come up and ask some questions later on.
Thank you, Andy. All right, I'm going to jump the presentation back, and we're going to give Jake another shot.
Thank you.
Let me run a little ways back here.
Sure, chalk one up for reality, right? It's doesn't happen in reality. Just crash out. But that was, I think, it was part of my connection, so I apologize for that. It lost some connectivity and then crashed out on me. But cool. All right, thanks, Matt, and thanks, Andy. I think we were going to do the lead in the other way, but that worked out well. That was really great. Really interesting examples. So great stuff. So let me kind of rewind, cross my fingers that it doesn't crash out on me again, and get going. So just to kind of start from where I was before, if you do a raise of hands, who is, I'm sure it's all of you, so you don't necessarily have to, let's put together IKEA furniture. Use that raise hand. See a couple of hands out there. Right, it's really fun and easy to put together IKEA furniture. Right, super easy to understand those instructions. The picture-based instructions. Definitely not frustrating at all. Right. But if you go to the next slide, Matt, then imagine having to go through these kinds of instructions to maintain and build this kind of equipment. Now, if you think IKEA is complicated, then systems like this, and this is a system from one of our customers, Howden. They do make water pumps and other kinds of pump systems for water treatment and things like that. This is how they have to maintain those systems and how their customers have to learn and maintain those systems. Hundreds, sometimes thousands or tens of thousands of pages of documentation in order to do that. While that may have been fine, 20, 30, 40 years ago, today, and this was mentioned earlier as well, it's not really how you get, it's not how you recruit new engineers. It's not how you maintain your workforce. It's not how people learn today, right? How many people would rather hear, ask this audience again too, how many of you would rather watch a YouTube video, or how many of you do watch YouTube videos to learn, even things on the day-to-day, how to maybe fix something simple at home or fix something simple in your car. That's how people learn today. It's through videos, it's through interactive content. You're not going to want to sit down and read a 10,000 page manual. Even if you have background in that area, it's still going to be complicated. And it's going to take a really long time to do that. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see, and this is just, this is a video. This is a kind of this example you're seeing here is on a demonstration unit. It's a really small version, but it's to really illustrate a point. And I don't know if the
Do you want me to play the video?
Playing audio? Yeah, you can play the video.
Just be aware if it has audio, it might blow your voice out.
Yeah, this one doesn't have audio, so it should be fine. But what you're seeing here is essentially what they've transitioned to, and I have to turn around because I got to click on the screen here so I can see it. There we go. But this is essentially what Howden is transitioning their customers to. This is running on a mobile device, but what they're doing now is when they sell these super expensive pumps and manufacturing equipment, which cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, they'll throw in a HoloLens with that. And that HoloLens is going to be filled with experiences just like this, where their customers can learn about the interiors of how these systems work, learn about different safety components, safety warnings. Here you're seeing electrical systems, keypad areas, high pressure areas. It's filled with all this kinds of information, including how the system operates, so they can even virtually play and virtually learn how this system runs without having to take the system apart, or without, of course, even needing the real system there in front of them. What you're seeing here is a digital overlay on top of the physical equipment. So we're able to merge the physical and digital. And then on top of that, we can bring in live data. So not only seeing how the internal components work, but see how it's performing in real time, and then tie that to training material or service information. So what we saw there was, because of the IoT data we had running in the system, we saw that a pressure threshold was met, meaning that one of the diaphragms in this diaphragm pump was broken. Since we know that diaphragm pump was broken, and we know exactly which part was broken, we can then tell you, as say the engineer on this system, hey, you need to go order a new part. And through this whole system, through this whole digital pathway, you can order that part in the application right from your HoloLens or your mobile device. And then here we'll show you how to take out the broken unit and put in the new unit. So you're doing this much more quickly. So instead of having to, say in the past when this diaphragm broke, first of all, you wouldn't know it broke until the system was going haywire. And then you'd have to find the right person, or they'd have to find the right person, and then they'd have to find the right documentation, and then they'd have to scroll through, or not even scroll through, flip through that entire documentation until they found the right way to fix it. right? Versus if you have a system like that, since you're having live streaming IoT data, you can not only see how it's performing, but we can predict based on historical data when that system might break and tell you in advance that you're going to need to replace that unit before it breaks. And then again, show you how to do it right in front of you, almost like a virtual color by numbers, if you would. There's a whole lot you can do really quickly, and that really speeds up your time to service equipment. It reduces downtime significantly and just increases customer satisfaction when it comes to how customers in that case, increases it exponentially. I mean, just based on what you're seeing there, you can imagine the possibilities of what you can do. So if you go to the next slide, that's going to be a video on this one. This one has has audio. This is an example with one of our other customers, Skoda in Europe, and how they're using really the full digital thread, IoT, AR, CAD, all of that stuff, how they're using it actually like for real in their factories today. So that's about a 2-minute video. I'm just going to let that run and you guys can take a look. So go ahead, Matt. There should be audio in this one.
In the Skoda plant, the digitalization of the press shops helped us to create one online smart maintenance system. Every day, we use condition monitoring data during our meetings, augmented reality for exploring press line elements, and its mobile version directly for press line maintenance.
I don't know, Matt, if you're able to play.
We save time because with the 3D live machine model, we can immediately locate a defective part, watch maintenance guidelines, documentation, and stock quantity. Augmented reality helps us to check the correct new part setting and speed up the maintenance process so that the press line can produce thousands of parts again and the system can collect and analyze new data. Like manufacturing quality, which is automatically checked already during production by built-in machine cameras. New technologies are changing the way the machine is controlled. The system is used daily by maintenance staff and management. For the highest production quality, we use a special robot-mounted optical 3D scanner, which quickly identifies potential quality defects. The smart maintenance mobile system allows the staff to use the augmented reality technology and monitor the press line in a very practical way. All data are automatically collected and stored in one IT system, so they are easily accessible from any PC or mobile device via the IT plant network. Imagine a situation where you need to replace a broken mechanical machine part as soon as possible. We use a 3D scanner and a 3D printer to make a temporary plastic robust component model, which is mounted and used in the machine before we buy it or make it on our own. We believe in digitalization, and we are constantly implementing modern industrial systems. Thanks to all our innovations in smart maintenance system, we increased manufacturing productivity by 3% in 2017. Skoda, simply clever.
Okay, great. So was everyone able to see that video? I get a show of hands. I had an issue seeing it on my end, so I wanted to make sure everyone was able to watch that. So show of hands if you were able to see that. All right, cool, great, awesome. So yeah, you saw a lot of different things happening in that video, all coming together, very similar to Howden in some ways, but really at a factory scale. You know, everything from a design share, design review to service and maintenance, monitoring, all coming together in all kinds of ways, and it really gets to our vision as PTC is how we see these different technologies coming together. You know, we don't see augmented reality being a one-off tool that'll help you do one thing, or IoT helping you do another thing, or CAD going to do another thing. It's all these different components that really come together. And I think that was a really great example of that. If you go to the next slide, Matt. So you kind of saw there, pieces of that in some of our other examples. So our augmented reality platform is called Vuforia. For those of you who have been in the augmented reality space for some time, you're probably familiar with us. Our AR platform powers, roughly 50 to 60%, maybe more, of all augmented reality apps on the market. It's actually been an AR platform that's been out there since 2012. So it was one of the first platforms that was out there. It was part of Qualcomm back in the day. And then we, PTC, brought it in-house about 4 or 5 years ago now, and took it from what was just an SDK, a software development kit, and really turned it into this whole suite of different products that are fine-tuned for different audiences and different use cases, really geared towards the industrial and manufacturing type of space. So when we started, we started with Vuforia Engine, and that's our software development kit that allows you to build really powerful custom applications in Unity, a popular gaming engine for those who aren't aware. Allows you to have your own custom branded applications and really kind of get almost video game quality in your AR apps. We see most of our customers using that for sales and marketing type of experiences, Lego, McDonald's, Mercedes-Benz, and a number of others. I'm not going to go into too much detail into all of these. I would need a whole hour or a whole day to really dive into these more. But I'll kind of touch on them really quickly. What you also saw earlier was Vuforia Studio. So that was the Howden experience. So for those who, and organizations that don't have developers or don't consider themselves, very technical, Studio allows you to build AR experiences really based off of CAD models and through primarily drag and drop. So it's a really great way to build AR experiences and then quickly tie in IoT data like we saw in the Howden example and some other components as well. Then the last two, so say you don't have any 3D data, that's a big concern with a lot of companies, especially in the manufacturing space, right? You have a lot of these older organizations that have been around a long time. They're really great at what they do. Like I mentioned earlier in my first attempt at the talk, I worked for Dow Chemical, really great company for building all kinds of materials. Caterpillar, really great at building their vehicles and all their equipment. But those companies and some others, don't always have 3D CAD data. It's not something that's been a concern. So how do you still take advantage of augmented reality and building a consumable work instructions in AR or in AR being augmented reality, kind of mixed reality with holograms, or AR in the sense of assisted reality, whereas you have digital content that kind of sits next to you versus sitting in your world. And that's where Vuforia X for Capture comes in. So we designed that tool set to allow you to build out AR experiences, whether or not you have 3D CAD data. And then last is we have their Vuforia Chalk. So that allows you to have really quick one-to-one remote expert sessions. So if you have someone, say you're working with a colleague halfway across the country or halfway across the world, and you need to get some quick assistance with them, it's kind of like Skype or can be designed. We have multiple CAD tools that we offer. Creo and Onshape is one we actually just acquired a few months ago. So that tool is designed, all the parts are designed in 3D, but then you want to track those individual parts when you're going into manufacturing. You want to make sure that you manufacture those individual parts in that system. The door, the hood, the steering wheel, all those things. You want to keep track of all those parts within the larger system and making sure that those parts tend to be designed, have teams that are designing parts of those cars, but you want to make sure that all those parts fit in together in the larger system. So Windchill allows you to do that and allows you to track those changes as they get built out. Then the next layer up above that is IoT, and we have our ThingWorx platform for that. So some of those parts, say you have hundreds, thousands of parts in the engine, and all different kinds of sensors. Especially these days, cars are sensored up like crazy. You want to actually keep track of how the car's performing, right? And this is common if you've bought a new car in the last few years. You have your tire pressure monitoring system, you have airbag monitoring system, of course your fuel level, pressure, heat, all those different things. If you wanted to monitor those remotely and monitor how all those individual parts are performing, right? That's the next layer on top of that. And then the final layer, this is what you've seen today, is that AR piece, the augmented reality piece. So that's really how we've seen AR fit in, is that kind of final layer on top of all these other things that are happening in the background, is how do you actually deliver all that data to someone in a really effective way, in a way that makes sense, in a way that's easy to understand, in a way that's not overwhelming, and of course, in a way that's relevant to them. So depending on who they are and what they're doing, whether they're servicing the vehicle, whether they're manufacturing it, they're getting the right data that they need at the right time. And AR allows you to do that in a really effective manner, as you've seen, in some of the examples I've shown here, and of course you've seen the examples the other presenter showed here today. So AR really is kind of one of the last steps in this ultimate vision of the digital journey of manufacturing companies, and bringing this data to the forefront and actually making it useful and relevant for them. Next slide. Here's just a small sample of the number of customers that we work with. Some of them I've mentioned in the past. But you can see a lot, of course, in the manufacturing industrial space. Caterpillar, which was mentioned earlier, John Deere, BAE Systems, Colfax, 3M. But then you have some kind of wild cards in there, right? Others you might not expect, like Cannondale, who makes road bikes and all different kinds of bicycles. They use AR for service and even for some sales and marketing as well. Lego, that might be a surprise. I mentioned it earlier. They've got a whole set of Lego kits that are out there that use our model recognition capability to make your sets come to life. So there's a whole set of kits out there that are actually really cool. Our office in Boston is filled with Lego. After Lego started implementing that technology, it gave us an excuse to get a whole bunch of Lego sets in the office, which was awesome. But the point is here, right? This technology is really applicable to all different kinds of industries. Of course, manufacturing, like we're talking about today, but really all different kinds of industries, across the manufacturing spectrum, whether that's discrete manufacturing, whether that's aerospace and defense, whether that's consumer products. All these companies are finding real uses for it and really finding real value in these technologies each and every day. Next slide. Yeah, that's my last one. So yeah, that's all I had today. If you guys want to contact me, obviously we'll be here. I think we're doing Q&A now, and then we'll be here kind of walking around. But definitely feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn, anything like that. Happy to chat with you more, maybe set up some time and talk you through some. We have tons of examples. I couldn't fit them all here today, but definitely look forward to chatting with you all more. So thanks very much for the time.
All right. Sorry about the little audio issue for your Facebook Live folks. It did get back. Sorry, it got resolved in right around a minute, so not too bad. I got to jump through the slides a little bit so we can get to the main one about how Q&A is going to work. And we have it here. Okay, cool. So if all the speakers wouldn't mind just, coming and joining me up around here. I'll step away from the lectern because, we got a virtual space. So we might as well just, kind of step around the stage. The way Q&A is going to work, and I've already got a couple of questions in the queue from Facebook, so those will probably be the ones that we start with. But in the room, what we would like you to do is basically just raise your hand if you have a question. And, if you have it, keep the hand up there because I do call people out. I try to notice that the order in which the hands came in, and I will call them in that order. Again, the exception to that would be if one person keeps asking a lot of questions and there's, lots of other people waiting. But the first question actually coming from Facebook this time around is for Jake. On your presentation, Francis Wong wanted to ask, with the approach that you had, how does that help in designing a new product?
So it depends, on the approach. I don't know if that was asked at a particular point in the presentation. Like I said, design review is a big part of augmented reality. So I think some of the examples I showed, where we're overlaying the digital on top of the physical, that of course assumes that you have that existing system today. But actually, I didn't really have it in my examples there. But a lot of what you see is that design review, both for manufacturing, making sure something fits, in a system, and if we see a lot in sales and marketing, especially today, right? We're in like the automotive space, right? Not many of you are probably going to go down to a car dealership to go buy a new car. You might want to see it virtually first, in your driveway before you make any kind of physical contact these days. But the digital twin aspect, especially for like design review, designing products, is a huge part of it. And of course, a big part of that assumes that you have the 3D content to do that. So that's becoming an increasingly important skill is 3D design, CAD design, and all that stuff, because that's going to become very important. I think increasingly important as we move towards our more remote world in these coming months and years.
Awesome. Again, if you have questions in the room, please raise your hands because I'll keep going with Facebook questions until I see some come into the room. The raise hand button, by the way, is on the bottom center of your screen in case anyone has any questions. And then the way it'll work is that I'll call on you and you can unmute yourself and ask your question, and then we'll let the presenters answer, and then keep going with Q&A. But that said, we have another question coming in from Facebook. This one is from Tracy Matthews. She says, and this seems to be a more general one across to anybody, it makes sense that large corps like Toyota would use this, but how are smaller companies able to use these technologies? She got a lot of questions here, so I'm going to keep going. How do you get traditionally low-tech people within manufacturing to implement VR and AR? And can someone speak of where lean and VR AR go together?
I might let Andy answer one of those because I know he had the Toyota example. So.
Yeah. There's a lot of questions. I think you shouldn't look at the size of the company as such. I don't think bigger companies are better placed to particularly create augmented virtual reality solutions. I think it's more defining what the problem is you want to solve and what the benefit is for you, and then looking more in detail on what information or what data sets are required to solve that issue. And as I mentioned before, work in small steps, because I know there is a resistance indeed in manufacturing environments to adopt technologies like this. You have a few early adopters, but they're quite limited. To give you an idea, the whole process with Toyota, basically that simulator project we did in 2011, and then it took 4 years before we opened up the discussions again about moving forward with some of the aspects of AR and VR in manufacturing. And now we're again a few years later, because now because the process just takes a long time. So I think in a smaller organization you can move more quickly because you have a more agile way to move forward. And how that connects to lean, yeah, I think you can just get more efficient and more productive by using kind of technologies. The first step is the hardest because you need to learn a lot and you will need to convince some people in the organization. But once they see the benefits, gets adopted quite quickly. And it's not only about that one use case that you think about. And you need to broaden up the spectrum as well, because we usually start with one pilot and then we involve other departments as well, like HR. They can use solutions that they are created, so your return on investment gets more interesting by involving more people as well in the company.
Yeah, and really quick, if I can jump on that. This is one of the coolest things that's really kind of happening now. You talk about big companies like Toyota and Mitsubishi, and, that have millions of dollars to do with some experimentation. There's solutions out now that can get you solving this technology for, using web creation tools and maybe $1,000 as opposed to $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 just to develop a prototype. That's what's really cool about the rate at which this technology is developing. And so it's, in terms of, I'm trying to get to all three questions. So is it possible for smaller companies to use these technologies? Yes. And in fact, in a lot of cases, smaller companies are actually better positioned to use a lot of these technologies. Big companies are, you can't turn a giant tanker ship in a second. It's very hard to make them shift and turn and move. And whereas a smaller company, they can implement new processes and new procedures and new technologies a lot faster. And so it's not as hard necessarily in a smaller company to get this stuff working. In terms of low-tech people, actually, the coolest thing about these solutions is that they work best for low-tech people. It's going back to what Jake said. People don't want to read a manual nowadays. They're not going to pick up a book and look through 400 pages to try and figure out the procedure to change whatever part they need to in their machine. But the cool thing about augmented reality that aside from the fact of having that information right in front of you and available for you to look at, as you're looking at the machine in context of what you're seeing, the other big benefit there is you don't have to Google for it and wonder if you've got the right result. If you're using the manufacturer's information from their augmented reality system and it's in context directly in front of you, you're looking at the accurate information. And that's, almost as important as knowing, just as important as having the amount of time being reduced to how long it takes to find the procedure that you're trying to do is knowing that you've got the right information. I'm going to see if anyone else wants to jump in on this, and I got a couple of questions in the room.
I'd like to just add a comment that I agree with Andy that small steps. You can show people a real world example or an example of a problem that's been solved with this technology, something that folks can relate to, that opens up their minds. And if it's something that they feel that they can take on without making a huge leap in technology or in training, I think that would go a long way into getting people to adopt the technology.
Yeah, and
awesome.
I'll just add, I'll just add really quickly also. So I was part, like I mentioned before, I was part of a really large organization before I joined PTC, typical manufacturing organization. And it was hard. I was really the only one in the company, and this is back in like 2016, trying to, and Matt can attest to this because he's worked with me on that a little bit, getting an organization like that to, at least at the time, and I think it's easier now, definitely easier now, to adopt those technologies is definitely hard. It's like you said, it's steering a large ship trying to turn a direction. So a lot of it comes down to company culture, and that's regardless of you're a big company or a small company. It's about the willingness to change and the willingness to try try new things. But I think, like was said, if you're at a smaller organization, I think there's higher likelihood of success, since there's fewer, depending on the organization, but their odds are there's fewer hoops to jump through and fewer people to convince. But I think the time to get to value is quickly too, and that's what it's all about, and that's what I've learned too through my time at Dow and my time working with all our customers now. Is it's not so much about the technology. There's a lot of cool technologies out there, a lot of great technologies out there. It's the fact that this technology is able to provide so much value so quickly. That's what's really exciting about it. We've seen companies that have adopted the technology, even something as simple as our Chalk tool, which is just really it's really simple. It's just video chat with augmented reality annotations, but that's able to save some of our customers tens of thousands of dollars in the matter of weeks, just from before COVID, reduced travel and reduce communication time. So AR can be as simple as that. It doesn't necessarily have to be a detailed holographic interface. It can be, and that'd be awesome, but it can be much simpler than that.
All right, so Chad Canada, you want to try unmuting yourself?
Yeah, my question's like a lot of projects when you're trying to get somebody to buy in, what type of cost benefit type analysis have you seen in some of these different, maybe your smaller scale implementations, if you were trying to start something, get your pilot, and also the duration typically, because you got a large learning curve of training, you have the technology, the resource implementation. I'm kind of curious what the experience has been.
So I'm going to repeat the question just because I saw it. I was watching the Facebook feed and it was a little bit quiet there. So the big things he asked were about cost benefit analysis that's done to justify the projects, to get them going, and then also to justify them once they are going, and also the kind of timelines that you see to start seeing and reaping some of the benefits from development.
Yeah, I can take a stab at it. So that's a big part of our process at PTC. Is convincing organizations, why they need the technology, or a lot of our customers for the AR technology are existing customers for our CAD or IoT software. So it's why should they add on this extra technology on top of what they're already using? So that's a big part of our process when we go through workshops with customers. Is before we get into solving it technically with tools and AR solutions, we do a value assessment first, and we have this whole calculator, this value calculator, and I believe there's a version of it that's public, so I can grab the link and put it in the chat, where we work with customers and enter in some values to help them see what the value is before we get into the technology, and so we have a whole digital transformation group whose goal is to sit down with our customer and say, all right, what's your actual problem? Maybe you came to us because the technology is really cool, and that's great, foot in the door. But what's your actual problems that you're trying to solve today? Is it, it's taking a really long time for someone to find the right person to fix an issue? Is it that, parts go missing? Are you trying to reduce travel costs? And then putting those values into this calculator that we have that calculates, how large is your workforce? How much time could we potentially reduce per person? And then putting out a value saying, this is how much you can save in the next 6 months if you use a tool that allows you to eliminate travel or whatever it might be. So it's showing that value up front, and then getting into, okay, we see what the problem is. We see what the potential is for it. Now let's get into the technology. So you already have them bought in to the idea without having looked at really the technology so much up front. They're bought into it because it's going to solve a problem for them, regardless of what that problem is. How complicated that solution is really gets down to the capabilities of that organization. It really, and again, comes down to culture. But how it's designed can be done in-house. It can be done with organizations. We have a large partner network that can work with those organizations. But it's really getting to that value first, is showing the dollars that can be saved, and then after that, that's the easy part.
Okay, I appreciate the explanation. How about when you have like a 3-shift operation? We talked about the low tech type worker, a lot of the companies that service this type of tool, is a 24/7 type thing, where you would have the expertise adoption's a big thing of, and that there again, you're back to the training learning curve of how to make it useful and adopting it. I'm curious what your experience has been.
Yeah, I can take that unless someone else has I don't want to hog the mic.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if Andy or Andrew want to jump in on anything here.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
I can jump in while you're if you think a way to wordsmith it. Really, there's a couple ways in terms of rolling it out across a large organization. It's about scaling up. Right, you don't want to boil the ocean. You don't want to come in and say, tomorrow everyone's going to be putting on HoloLenses. When you come in on your shift, everyone's going to be putting on these HoloLenses, and it's going to have everything you need right in front of it. That would definitely not be the approach generally I would take for that. It's about let's solve what are some problems we can solve on a smaller scale and scale up from there, but also who are some people we can get to be champions within the organization. If we can get champions higher up in the organization and kind of help change that culture from the top down, that's ideal. But you also want people to buy into the technology from the bottom up as well. So that's why there's a lot of capabilities that you're seeing here today don't have to be on fancy headsets like the HoloLens or Magic Leap or anything like that. There's a lot that can be done on phones and devices that people are used to. And it's designing the experience, to be in the right, delivered in the right manner. So you want to scale that up quickly. I think that's a really key point. Or sorry, scale up slowly. Scale up slowly.
Andrew, do you have something to add?
Yeah, off shift training has always been a difficult situation. Weekend support has always been a difficult issue. I wish I had a magic bullet for that. Outside of having a champion on each shift or having specialists who maybe straddle shifts in some fashion, that's what I've generally seen. But it's a vexing problem.
Thank you.
Andy, did you have anything to add or no?
I think Jake touched upon most of the things here.
Yeah, I mean, just to add something myself really quick, the one thing that I've seen is, to go back to your first question a little bit in terms of the cost benefit analysis, it's almost funny sometimes to see how quickly you can actually get to either cost savings or even profitability, depending on the situation of how you're using augmented reality. It really, when you start to look at it, it's kind of amazing how quick it gets there. This technology can do things that can't be done otherwise, and at the same time, it can be implemented, very quickly now. And simple use cases produce very, very powerful results. And I'll, happy to talk about that a little bit more one-on-one rather than hold up that conversation anymore. Sidearm, you have a question.
Approach. So I'm setting up the question. Okay, give me 15 seconds. I can't imagine that any manufacturer is not going to mandatorily continue to print manuals with the parts diagrams and all that. They have to. You can't just dump that. So how, using Andy's idea to to focus in on where would you need it most? What is the best, highest priority place to do it? How would you take an entire system like that and say, out of all those moving parts, this moving part is probably the highest return on, turning it into an AR augmented servicing capability. That's part A. And part B, let's say that pump diaphragm broke so often that the manufacturer said, aha, we're going to make a design change and change it and retool it, remanufacture it, re-update all the printed things. And now they have to turn around and update the VR AR thing that goes with it. So it's really two questions. How do you identify where to start in a massive piece of machinery? Any guidelines? And then is there actually an issue with keeping VR AR up to date with changes in the actual piece of machinery? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I can take that, Andy. I think a lot of it had to do with some of the stuff I showed, but feel free to jump in there. So yeah, thank you. That's a great questions. A lot of questions. I'll try and answer it as best as I can, both of them. So when it comes to your first question, identifying what to work on. First of all, if you're having a part that's breaking all the time, I think that's a whole other issue for the manufacturer that they should probably address. But I think that right there, gets to the point is, are there things that, and this comes down to the value assessments that we do, are there in terms of what things to approach first, are there and again, it depends on the culture of the organization, it depends on their maturity with the technology, but if they're coming to it fresh, is what are some things that are really frustrating your customers, that could be quick wins, quick turnaround, but high value. Is it, if this part's breaking all the time, maybe that's not initially an AR experience. Maybe it's, strictly an IoT experience. Maybe we can put in a sensor in there to tell us before it's going to break, versus waiting for it to break. So it's approaching it from that perspective first, instead of trying to apply the AR to it. Because I mean, you're right, not necessarily, and maybe you weren't implying this, not everything needs to be AR. And I'll be the first one to tell you that. Even being someone who's very passionate about AR, not every solution needs to be an AR solution. Because if you try and do that, it's like fitting a square peg in a round hole. You're not going to have happy customers who do that. So it's really trying to just throw it on a board. What are problems that you're experiencing today, regardless of the technology? And then what are ones that frustrate your customers the most? And then see how we can solve those problems. Now, your second question, and hopefully that kind of answers your question. To your second question, in terms of updating the documentation, you're definitely, creating the paper documentation is definitely, I don't think that's something that's going away or we're necessarily trying to replace. It's going to be very hard, if not impossible, to fit all that information into a well-designed singular AR experience. I think there's still going to be value in having that source documentation there, but I think over time you're going to see that be replaced as new systems are built out. I'm not expecting Caterpillar to tomorrow go and throw away all their and all their customers to throw away all their paper documentation. But I think over time you're going to see things like what Howden's doing is, instead of getting this big booklet, here's a HoloLens, or here's maybe a website that has the information be searchable. And I think having the content be digital is a huge advantage over being physical paper documentation, because you say to yourself, when these systems change, it's much easier to update the digital form of that content than it is to go and reprint 10,000 page manuals. As soon as that, what we have our customers doing is, as soon as a part changes in their PLM system and their product lifecycle management system, as soon as a part changes in design or any attribute of that can be immediately pushed upstream into an AR experience. So without having to do anything, as soon as that design changes, as soon as anything like that changes, the next time someone loads up that digital procedure, that digital manual, that part the part number, any metadata or any CAD attributes of that data that's changed will automatically be changed at that end of the system, of course, being controlled by the author in the right manner. But that's a much better process, right, than having to worry about, am I in the latest version of this paper document? Maybe it's ripped up, maybe there's people have highlighted it, and who knows what, or maybe it's in a bookshelf somewhere. This is having the digital version immediately available to you, whether it's in a web browser, whether it's on a device or whatever, what have you. I think that's a much more efficient and much more secure approach, because you can also ensure that everyone across your organization, no matter where they are globally, is on the correct, the most up-to-date information. You're not worrying about someone who's running that equipment maybe over in Korea is basing their service procedures off of outdated information. So I think the digital way of doing things has immense benefits over paper documentation.
Yeah.
Thank you. How did they pick that one cute little pump out of that entire water treatment system? That, to me, that was how come that one got the air treatment and the rest didn't?
So that was just an example. That was just kind of a demonstration on a smaller scale. That was that particular video was a 3D print of a smaller version. I should have prefaced it with that. So the actual version, and maybe I should have used that video. The actual version of that pump is much larger. But that was just that particular example that I use. I'll share some videos. I'll put it in the chat when we're done with the Q&A to other examples that actually show. And maybe I should have used those the larger parts of the system that are using the augmented reality experience.
Yeah, give me a second. I'm hearing about some audio issues. I'm going to click a couple buttons here, and hopefully that'll fix them. So just give me a few seconds. I'm going to be playing with spatialized voice sound just for a moment here. And hopefully what I just did there will fix all the issues. Andrew, you unmuted. Do you have something to add to that?
Yes. We generally worked with our equipment vendors and got statistics from them and looked at the top 10% most frequently failed or replaced parts. We would look at that for inventory. Then from there, we would also look at parts that were very difficult to source. And we kind of used that as a starting point. Next, a lot would depend on where the plant was located. It was located in Chicago, where you knew you could get a part within, even same day. We would reduce the number of spare parts we would keep on hand. You were out in some small town where getting parts was much more difficult, say Springfield, Missouri, we would then buy more spare parts to have on hand. So I don't know that there's an absolute answer to your question other than working with the equipment vendors as to frequency of failures and what they see statistically as being frequency of replacement.
Andy?
Yeah, one thing maybe I want to add, it's basically circling back to the pipeline that I mentioned before in my slide deck. Because Jake mentioned, like, if there's something that changed to the CAD file, it's automatically available in AR. Until now, I didn't see a system that could manage that automatically. Certainly because most R&D departments don't process the files in the right way. Only not the ones we know. So there is a few manual steps that need to happen as well. It's not that it's just like one push of a button, but it's an important part of the whole process. So it shouldn't be underestimated to get pipeline set up and have a good discussion with R&D. I think in in an AR and VR development trajectory or roadmap, it's important to have somebody at R&D or engineering on your side to help you out with all those questions as well, and to streamline that.
Yeah, and just because it was you brought it up, and it's almost a specific use case that we answered within my company, Bundle AR. You guys will notice when I do this, I don't talk about us too much, but not necessarily for manufacturing, but there was some procedural information that we built a bundle for, an augmented reality bundle, where we knew, and the people who were producing a manual for a procedure knew going into it that the information was going to be out of date the moment they printed it. And so, but they had to get the information out. They couldn't wait, and they couldn't, they didn't want to have to send hundreds of thousands of documents out every week as the procedures got changed and got modified. Now, this happened to be for medical equipment as opposed to for manufacturing, but the situation is the same in that, okay, well, when you first set up a service manual for a piece of equipment, if it's a new piece of equipment, you're going to realize that information changes over time. The cool thing about using augmented reality, and particularly the way that our technology works, it's an augmented reality bundle. So effectively, if there's one manual goes out, there's one bundle of information that goes out with it. And what particularly Bundle AR does is it's a content management system. So the cool thing about that is, as the procedure changes or as the information updates, you can just go to a web interface, make the changes, press a button, and it's deployed worldwide. You don't have to worry about reprinting a manual. And you can have printed in the initial manuals that you went out, which would be the target or the original, that's the trigger for, okay, if I'm looking at this procedure page on this particular manual, I know that when I look at it through augmented reality, I'm going to get the most updated information every time I look at it with the augmented reality app, because the augmented reality app is going to update every single time, or it's at least going to check if there's an update every single time that they open it. That's one of the really cool use cases about this, because if you try to think about what the cost, if you ship 100,000 manuals out, what's the cost of reshipping them? What's the cost of reprinting them? Versus the cost of having somebody go into a web interface, make a change, and press a button to say deploy. Because the cost savings there on doing that once justifies doing it. When you realize that you're going to be doing it multiple times over and over and over again, it's a no-brainer. In terms of the implementation factor, there was getting back to the question about just convincing people to do these projects. It's really interesting sometimes when you see the decisions don't necessarily make sense. We did an implementation with a company where we showed them profit on their first use, and they still didn't want to keep going with it. I couldn't understand why, but it happens. And so, it's one of those things where you're just like, okay, well, it's new technology. Somebody didn't like it. All right, we're going to move on. And so, some people are going to be early adopters and they're going to understand it. They're going to see the value right away. And those are the people that we want to work with, frankly, because they do recognize the value in the technology. And I'll echo what Jake said. Not everything is like the solution for everything is not augmented reality. And that's one of the biggest things that we tend to focus on is, when customers come to us with what we consider to be a bad use case, we just tell them it's a bad use case. Because there's a better way to do it, and sometimes augmented reality is not the solution. But with that, do we have any more questions in the space here? Last chance for anyone to raise their hand, because we are running up on time, and I would love to get back to some one-on-one or individual conversations. Anyone in Facebook world, do you guys have any questions? They got about a 30 to 40 second delay, so I'm going to let them mull it over to see if one more question comes in, because we have gone a little bit past what we normally do on the Q&A time. So I'll give them a few more seconds, and if not, I'm going to thank all of our presenters, so I'll start doing that now. Thanks, guys. Sorry about the few technical difficulties we've had this time, although I got to say, Jake's dancing. I do got to say, some of the, for having technical difficulties in a space like this, they're still not generally as bad sometimes as having really bad technical difficulties in a physical space. So thanks, everybody. We will have this information posted to the webpage. The live stream does get recorded on Facebook. It's there forever. It's not going away. We will post the presentation links as well. I do want to call your attention to the screens if you want to see the topics that are coming up for the next 3 months. We have healthcare will be next month, followed by education, and then esports and games, which is always a fun one. We're working on a couple of fun surprises for that one, hopefully. And then, this is in the next few weeks, we're also going to be determining what all the topics are going to be for next year, and we will start putting that information out there. So for the people who do have experience in the space and possibly want to get involved, we will be looking for presenters, we'll be looking for sponsors, we'll be looking for partners for those events. Once again, I do want to say thanks to our sponsors, Bundle AR, 1871, and Verbella. And with that, I'm going to let the live stream folks know that you guys have about 60 seconds, and I'm going to turn off the live stream, and we're going to go back to just some open networking here in the room. I will unmute the room in a moment. Once again, thank you, Andrea Fedorowski. I'm hoping that there might be some questions for you specifically about how, if you're an AR VR person, you want to connect with people in the manufacturing space, how to get into the space basically, because I know I recognize some of the names in the audience. I know some of these people are AR VR developers, and they might be just looking for how to get into this particular industry. And obviously, Jake, your background with Vuforia and PTC is well known. I know you've been working both in manufacturing and the technology for quite a while, as well as Andy. So thanks again, everybody. I'm going to now unmute the room, and I'll be cutting off the live stream in just a few moments. So let's change it back to spatialized voice. We're going to unmute the room. Love it if you guys could use the clap commands and give these guys a round of applause. And yeah, with that, thanks again, everybody. I hope to see you guys at the next one. Thanks.
Thank you.
Just a reminder about the space for everybody. If you're trying to talk to somebody and it gets loud in one area, use the controls and walk to a different area, because the voices are spatialized here, so you can move away from people if the conversations are getting too loud. All right.
Good job, Andy.
Thank you.
So how are you going to handle the long drive home?
Tiring.
It's exhausting. I know you got to pay for parking and traffic. It's going to be terrible.
Charlie, I'm adding that to the bad, so bad they're good joke list.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
I'll be thirsty when I get home, that's for sure.
Yeah, I bet. Learn anything tonight?
Yes.
Hi,
yeah, it was some good stuff. Yeah, it was good stuff.
Hey, Justin.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good.